Hey, welcome back to Worth 1000 Words, my series where I write a 1000 word short story based on a piece of artwork. And today I found some great artwork. It's a little bit outside of my comfort zone. It's not fantasy, it's not sci-fi, it's not horror. So I'm pretty excited to dive into it. It did conjure the idea of maybe a darker synth soundtrack. So I found an album called New Model by a band called Perturbator, I guess. It's an EP. I haven't listened to it at all yet, so we'll see how it goes. All right, now let's check out the artwork. Today's artwork is titled The Target, and it's by an artist named Ankush Sharma from Delhi, India. And really, what drew me to this piece was that we have our focal point, who is this guy with a gun way in the background, like a hitman of some kind. But we're still presented with this odd living room environment. Almost looks like where your grandma might live or something. And there's a cool story here. There's a lot of elements to work with. There's a photo in the background on the wall. There's all kinds of interesting decor. Did the hitman sift through the papers on the table or the meal, or is he coming through the front door? Even the direction of where the camera is was pretty intriguing to me, and I do have an idea which I'll talk about right when I begin the writing. It just hit me as soon as I saw it. So with that said, Ankush, thank you for the great artwork. I love what you did here, and let's move on to the writing. So I'll let you in on the little secret or the little hint that I said earlier on about the POV, and I think it's obvious to go from the POV of the hitman at this point, right? It looks like he's done all the stuff in the room, like the moving the papers around and everything, and there's a logical story to go from that point. But what I did is I chose a guy hidden in a closet, the actual target himself or herself. And I saw that there was a nice far back positioning in this room, and I assumed they were hiding somewhere, maybe in a closet. So here you can see I'm almost playing with the idea of hide and seek, getting warmer, getting colder. This was an opportunity to do a lot of more internal thoughts. I was going to go first person here, but I decided to do third person, just only because last time I did it, I had a very immediate first person execution in the last episode. And so here I just have this person observing this guy as he comes in, starting to take note of things like the window designs and different elements from the room. And now that it's funny because, and then here we go again, colder, like he's getting farther away. But I decide to use the idea of him being here because I decide that he's hiding in a closet, which is, I know, kind of a generic thing to do, but maybe a little bit more unexpected because it is so obvious. And then here we find the hitman. I decide, yeah, he's the one who sifted through all the elements on the table looking for something. So anyway, back to the positioning in the room. I thought it was funny because you're always so used to specifically maybe a house you live in or your parents' house or something, or a place that you frequent. When you go to a certain location that's not necessarily where you would normally be or where you would see the room from, that's where you start to notice things that are different. And here we have the hitman just kind of resting on the couch, taking stock, feeling very comfortable, and our viewer is noting all of the details, like when he lifts his foot up. Is it because he's admiring his own shoes, or is it because he has some sense of courtesy? And his leg is not twitching at all, even though that would be somewhat of a challenging position to keep your leg in for some time. So clearly this hitman is physically fit to some degree. And then I named the guy in the photo Duarte for some reason. It just popped into my head. And so now I'm starting to establish him looking around at all of the items in the room and noticing all the details, because really the artist put a lot of great detail in this room. There's a lot of character in it, actually. It doesn't seem generic in the least. Now things start to get a little weird. He sneezes, but he doesn't know if it was audible or if he imagined it because of some of the crumbs from his dinner. And here I decide he's in a closet. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a false wall or something like that. I think at one point I decided, like, oh yeah, maybe there is a false wall in the closet and there's a camera in there or something. And here I decide that, this is the moment where we start to have him be concerned with what's happening, because, all of the coats in the closet become wool, and they scratch him, and they dig into his skin. And then we have the hitman looking right in his direction. So now, is he going to get caught? We don't know. And once again, we have our viewer. It's kind of comedic in a way, because this person is about ready to be killed, or at least that's the intention of the hitman. But he's noticing all of the weird stuff, like the asymmetrical carpets, which I did notice. There's like 3 rugs on the ground, kind of in weird arrangements, and as well as the wallpaper and the lampshade. But here I kind of dial in that maybe this room was designed this way to be not suspicious in any way, but then also odd little elements like the photo. And here we go. We have our hitman approaching our possible victim here. And I noted, like, did he think he's on a catwalk? I don't know. I figured one foot in front of the other, how models walk down a catwalk, and that just popped into my head. And you can tell I'm getting much more humorous at this point, I think. And I ended up liking the contrast there, where we have someone in possible dire circumstances about ready to get killed, but then also kind of a goofy observation of the whole thing. And once again, his internal monologue is causing him to laugh. And he notes Duarte, who's the man in the portrait on the other wall. And here I decide to take his attention away, so he did survive that close call. And here I decide to name the character. I was getting a little confused myself I was actually envisioning the reader getting confused, and I think at the end too, I didn't clean it up quite enough, but I needed to put a name, because I didn't have a name for the man. I just called him the man, and then he. So I decided to be more clear and give our character a name. Yeah, here I talk about, despite the false wall in the camera, it was the most obvious spot. No, I did cut that out later though. It's funny. I kind of like it now thinking back, but oh well, edited out. And here I go, my terrible, terrible habit of going back and not continuing forward. But what I did is I was getting off track a little bit here, and I needed to bring the attention back to what did this man hear. And I decided it was going to be the drawer over in the distance that was sticking out a little bit, as if it doesn't ever close. Not as if the guy looked through it yet, which I think that's what the artist's intention was, but that it just opened up and got his attention. Calling it the cursed drawer, but that's the wrong word, because it did save him in this moment. And so I bring it back, where now he's heading over toward the drawer. And this is a moment where I definitely, I think in reading it, when I actually read the story later, I noticed that there were still some possibly or potentially confusing parts with the he versus the name. I am looking through this lens, which I do cut out later, like I said. But he's once again, he's critiquing this room from this angle that he finds himself in, and he's anthropomorphizing I think that's the right word, the killer. He's talking about how he's part panther, part man, velvet hide, curious eyes. So now he almost has a respect for this guy. So it's an interesting turn. It's almost as if this guy wants to get caught, which I do believe I allude to earlier on, but it's somewhat of a game, it seems like, anyway. And now we have the hitman kind of just continuing to look around, drawn to that drawer based from the sound. And he even, our hero, quote unquote, sees the comedy in it, the humor in it. And I just decided to keep bringing back this laughing element, because he's, I don't know, I think sometimes in situations laughter strikes you in the most inappropriate times, and I guess I went with it. And now we're getting to the end, where I decide I need to position the focal point where he is in the artwork. But I decided that, this was the end of it, right? He's already rifled through the room and opened the doors, and this is where it was going to end. I still didn't know how I was going to end it yet. If I would just leave it at this and leave it open-ended, or end it in some way. And I tease out the moment here with a light casting over this guy, and he opens the door, And then, illuminating the specimen with the glory of the night, neon contours. So really exaggerating the effect that the light outside is having on our subject. And I'm getting close, almost to 1,000, so I need to position him right where he is. And then once again, I have a little aside about, which I deleted, about how he was at least complimenting the hardwood floor choice. And I believe had to delete the stuff previously, like I said, with the false wall with the camera, because I just ran out of words. So here I was toying with, I wanted him to, I think what I was really, and I named the guy Malcolm for some reason. I don't know. It seemed fitting. What I wanted to play with is that throughout this entire sequence, our hero, or the guy who's hiding from being killed, he's constantly observing this room and noting how tacky everything looks. And then finally we have this and it's ironic, because it's the guy who sent to kill him, but he finally sees something of artistic merit in this house, and it happens to be the man just in the position as you see it in the artwork here, with a light shining around him, and this very interesting, well, very telling pose, I should say. And here I change him to be in the closet, but his clothes are what's causing the discomfort, instead of like coats and things around him. And at this point, I'm just really looking for places I can delete to give me some more words toward the end, because I definitely need more. And I give the man a proper noun here, but then I don't think I do it anywhere else, or I miss a lot of spots. Once I went back and read it for the recording, I noticed quite a few spaces that I didn't add it. And I think in hindsight, I probably would have given him a more interesting character. Something a little bit more exaggerated, like when I said part panther, or maybe renamed him, right? Once our main character decided to attribute those elements to our killer, maybe then he changes his name. That would have been cool. Oh well. So I think, that's what I do, is I delete these large paragraphs to get me back down, for sure. That's the only way to do it. I'm like, damn it, made it to the end, not enough. But I do simplify it. I do tell the end of the story in one single line, which is here. And that something triggered an explosion on the staircase, which ended this man. So we do know that the our friend Malcolm here does get the better of the hitman.
Warmer. Malcolm almost said it. On the tip of his tongue, some might say. But that wasn't quite right. It welled up from his throat, so near screaming he had to choke it back down. It filled his belly like a good meal. Very much warm. Did you want to get caught? An animalistic reflex, knowing when prey has nowhere else to run? In the darkness your mind plays tricks. He was happy the man parted the curtains, let more light in. The frosted glass was giving him a headache. The contrast of the window designs bothered him for some reason. Seeing it this way, from across the room where he had never been, looking out as he was now. Colder. This time he didn't say it, too far away to awaken whatever instinct had prompted that near disaster. The man, because Malcolm didn't know his name. And why should he? He had known he was coming, after all. Shouldn't he have known his name? Names were of no importance. Soon he would be of no importance. The man sifted through dinner scraps, papers, even checked the can of pens as if there could possibly be anything of significance. He lifted his mask and sniffed the plate like a dog. Interesting. He always assumed most of his kind were all about business, getting no pleasure from it. But everyone had to get some sort of pleasure from the profession, no? The man sat a moment, rested his arms on the back of the couch, almost propped a foot up on the coffee table. He hesitated, as if admiring how polished his shoe was. Or maybe he did have some courtesy. Such control. Not a twitch. Not a quiver. Finally, he lowered his leg to the ground, looked right at Duarte, who had such an exaggerated smirk, framed there by a field of flowers in front of which sat a vase of more. Who puts a vase of flowers in front of a painting of flowers? He stifled a laugh, had to bring his hand to his mouth at the last moment. His nostrils sucked in the last of his laugh, along with the scent of dinner, a few crumbs that... Choo! Did he hear it? Or just imagine it? Sweat butted everywhere. The closet became even more suffocating, every piece of his clothing wool, scratching, scratching, scratching. The man looked left, right at him. Through him? He stood, and the wake of his coattails blew the papers that weren't pinned by the mug onto the floor. How ugly the carpets looked, so asymmetrical, clashing with the wallpaper, the lampshade. He was learning so much from this vantage. For some reason, the view from the couch and every other angle he had witnessed this room from made it look ironically homey, with clever accents that may or may not clue the viewer in to the true nature of this place. The man approached, heel toe, 1 foot in front of the other. Did this man think he was on a catwalk? He had to swallow another laugh down. This one took 2 hands to guard the door of his mouth. How good it would feel to let it out. Maybe he'd still get a chance. He could smell the man's cologne, and at this distance, he decided it was a tasteful amount, enough to make him appear like everyone else, but not enough to require removal before a job like this, or a date. Stop it. 2 hands slipped off his face, which found itself in the crook of his arm. Stop looking at me like that, Duarte. As if that's your real name, you fucking cliche. The man jerked his head around to a sound, producing a handgun in that movement, smooth enough to let his scent linger. The back of the man's head didn't move, but Malcolm could hear the movement of his eyes, rolling in every possible direction, almost getting the view Malcolm did. Malcolm spotted it before the man did, that cursed drawer, second one down. Cursed was definitely the wrong word at this moment. That blessed drawer. No matter how many times he reinstalled the slider, or how he weighted what was inside, it always rolled out like a pouting jaw. The man turned toward it, heel toe, faster now, a snake gliding through grass. Malcolm exhaled. The crumb he had inhaled found its way out, tickling his nose canal. He didn't need his hands to cover his mouth anymore, so he allowed himself a scratch. God, this place looked awful. Wrong word again. Hideous place. The only thing of artistic merit in the room was this man, part panther, part man, velvet hide, hunter's eyes, which Malcolm could see the hint of as he faced him again, albeit on the other side of the room. He searched the end table that had stuck its upper lip out. Oh, the comedy. This time Malcolm contained his laughter without hands. It was the soundtrack of this ridiculous scene. Perhaps he did deserve to die because of this monstrosity. The man moved to the door, cut with off-putting glass, the glass that made his eyes hurt. But wait, something there. The acid light from the oval window crawled onto that velvet skin of his, down the peak of a broad shoulder, down the arm with a seam so sharp you could slit a throat with it, onto a gloved hand, holding a doorknob. A twist, a pull, the door glided open, illuminating this specimen with the glory of the night, neon contours of forged color that was indescribable. Over the threshold he went, still soundless, no talon nor claw, click, click, clicking on the hardwood, the missing piece. That's what he was, stalking to the staircase, the blinds thankfully parallel to the phantasmal light. 1 foot up, poised, ready, for his end. Frozen there, seared onto Malcolm's retinas as the explosion birthed. Pure art.
Note to self, don't pick a soundtrack or album or music of any kind that has lyrics that really threw me off. I didn't end up listening, as I said previously, so I didn't know what to expect. I think I listened to a sample of the first track, but there is one track in there that has singing in it, and it really threw me off, so I had to just take my headphones off during that point. I don't know. Does that affect you when you write? Do you mind lyrics at all? I know some writers don't. So what did I learn from this one? Well, I think that it was a little bit more comedic than I anticipated it. I did like playing with the element of the viewer or the hero not being the man you see in the photo, which I think that would have been a completely different tale in itself. Probably less interesting. I don't know. What do you think? And as I said, I wanted to take it away from the first person, even though I feel like maybe the first person perspective would have been more applicable to this situation, because we wanted to really get in the head of this character. This character wasn't doing a lot of action. It was mostly internal, observational. I have to say, even though I didn't know where it was going, I had a great time with this one. I was a little nervous that I was going to take much longer than usual, but I hit the hour mark-ish, so I was happy with that. And as I read through it before this, I did notice quite a few things that I would have changed, make it a little bit more clear for the author, like I mentioned, calling the man, making sure that proper noun was clearly established or clearly repeated throughout the story. Maybe even give him a better name so it was more identifiable. I think that's one thing I struggle with a lot, or I shouldn't say struggle with, but pay attention to a lot, is making sure that the pronouns are very clear to who you're talking about, when you're talking about, especially when you have two people of the same sex in the room. That's even more challenging. Names are always a good place to go, but then again, that can seem too repetitive as well, so you want to try to mix it up. And here I failed, but if I do end up publishing this, I think I can go back and fix all that stuff. Well, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. And as always, I would love to hear any suggestions you might have, any artwork you'd like to send to me to write to. I've done it once. I would love to do it again. And keep writing, keep reading, and I will see you next week. Thanks. Bye. If you'd like to read this story in its non-video format, check the link in the description. I didn't add anything else. Promise. Thanks again.